quorum. At the allotted time, can we have the government representatives into the room? Government reps, please. And fellow members, we shall have a 4-hour meeting. At around 4:30, we will take a 15-minute break. And dear members, at the last time, we spent 4 hours scrutinizing clause 1, 2, and 3, where a lot of the questions had to do with the 455 for the passageway, carriages in motion, and reserve method, and so on. So today we will carry on the scrutiny on clause 4 and 5, which involves Schedule 2, the layout plans for the West Kowloon Station. Let's welcome the government representatives. The Secretary, after our visit to the Bay Area, our flexion spirit has returned home. So we spent 4 hours scrutinizing clause 1, 2, and 3, and a lot of the questions had to do with the 455 and carriageways in motion, reserved, non-reserved matters. And can we have the electrical advisory to speak on the in discussion? And before we enter discussion, on the visit on the April 30th, I think the scope of the visit should, within their boundaries as defined by the ordinance. And now we're just pretending as a tourist to perform an clearance and immigration clearance procedures. So we requested to check out the entire boundary. So let the legal advisor finish speaking, and then I would like the Secretary to respond to your question. Mr. Cho, as for clause 1, 2, 3, I should not repeat them. Just one point on interpretation clause on clause 2 on C526 in the top section on how to do about a public authority. It actually does not include at the Shenzhen Port Ordinance, Cap 531, Section 2, and the definition of public authority has been defined, in which it stated that either that a court instead of a advocating court and a regulatory body, and the term of public authority is applied on C528 on the definition of the 528 also appears on clause 7 and 8. And for the bill ordinance as well as the Shenzhen Port Ordinance, and as for the actual operations of the actions, there will be difference compared to the Shenzhen Port Ordinance. If necessary, the administration can explain on the difference between this bill and the Shenzhen Port Ordinance. If necessary, they can supplement in writing. Thank you, Mr. Cho. Can I have the administration to respond, please? As for Mr. Eddie Chu's question on visit to the West Kowloon Station, we're of the view that getting down to visit the station to understand the scene, that's the experience as a tourist of the actual co-location arrangements. And Mr. Chu also mentioned they need to inspect other spaces within the stations for due to security reasons. A lot of the actual operations will need to pay extra attention on a security concern. So the visit at the members of the public or the tourists and deal with the places that would pass through there will bring the LegCo members to study in detail. Speaker not on.
佢聽我哋聽到佢啊。
We've heard him. Wait a minute. Mr. Chu, we have 3 members putting their hand, Mr. Elohim, Charles Mark, Claudia Mo. So what, are you raising a point of order or anything else? Point of order. Any other members like to raise a point of order? Mr. Cheng, any others? Mr. Ray Chan? 5 in total. And Miss Alice Mack, 6 in total. I shall let Mr. Chu finish question. 1 minute each for each. I don't even need to take a minute. As the chairman of the Bills Committee, you can explain that whether you think that on the Secretary response that no one in LegCo can inspect on the boundary to be delineated. Do you think it's reasonable? Or if you think it's reasonable, so what are we here for? And if your stance is the same of the government, and even on such peculiar suggestions, as the chairman of the Bills Committee, my obligation is to deal with the bills in accordance with the ROP of the chairman. On the policy matters, on the policy matters, can allow the members to inspect every detail. I'm not in a position to express my views. Mr. Elohim. I think the Transport Housing Bureau, that in the face of the members' opposition and had not been fair to us, that on the April 10th letter and the ministry respond on 19th of April, and Mr. Ray Chen had written on 13th of April, and up to this day the government have yet to respond. And to date, there's still an outstanding question. The responses every time is give a very perfunctory one. In response to my letter, that I'm asked him and how we are able to comply with the guidelines to quickly to adhere to the general terms. Is that the way to answer your question? In response to Mr. Eddie Chu, and for the details, please refer to the our response secretariat. And in your exam, you even ask to refer to textbook for it as part of your answer. On the visit on April 30th, and Mrs. Yip, and there will be an environmental hygiene panel. We cared about this panel. I do. Now that I couldn't attend that panel meeting. Next. And two area of concern. On one hand, the government had took so long and told us that due to security reasons that not all members can visit the station. Even if not all the members can attend, can we have a representative to attend the meeting to reduce any potential concerns? That is the common approach for the legislation dealing with sensitive issues. Now you're taking a radical measure to just order so, and we just have to pass the bill. And this meeting is held at the same time at the Environmental Affairs panel, which is a ill approach. Now that you need to consult us if you want to have extra sittings, at least you shall have to consult the chairman of the other panel. And now that a lot of people are not able to come to this meeting, and Ms. Tanny Chen, the chairman of the environmental panel, was not able to come to the meeting to ask questions. Even out of courtesy, at least you should consult or seek the consent of other panels in before you add the additional sittings. I don't think it's a appropriate approach. Last time I chaired a closed-door meeting, invite all members to come to discuss the timetable that you haven't. It's just you did not attend. That's not correct. I invite all members to come. That's not correct, Chairman. You haven't told us what's the agenda of the closed-door meeting. I expected this answer. I don't think it make a difference if we could attend the meeting or not. You just bulldoze your decision on us, and even you will just claim you have to consent, and now it shows that you're negotiable. You just can't say that we didn't come to discuss. We don't even agenda to that meeting, and it claims it's a working meeting, and then just have your way through. Ms. Claudia Mo. I heard from the Secretary, Frank Chan, that on April 30th, that to the visit investigation, that we'll see what the tourists will we're able to see we're not tourists. This is the Legislative Council. We have to role of scrutinizing the government as if a check and balance on the administrative arm. If we treat us as tourists, and such window dressing is pointless. So if this logic actually makes sense, that anything to do with the government when we work to scrutinize or take a big visit, and then you just only provide what the outsider or anyone in public can see. For the Lama Sea tragedy, at least there has a closed door meeting where we have to surrender your mobile phones. Just we have it in have our own ideas. Just we at least get to know a bit more. For an oversight upload, you should prudently reconsider the West Kowloon arrangements instead of setting the land boundary for us. Mr. Vincent Cheng, I hope that the Bills Committee to resume the discussion as soon as possible instead of discussing the details of the visit. And last time, Mr. Edit Chu especially carried the new members actually to arrange a visit for us. I clearly understand and agree to the arrangement. And Chair, Madam, can we enter the item as soon as possible?
我唔見得你好好啊。
鄭議員，你嘅講完啦係嘛？咁跟住陳志全。
So Mr. Chan finished. Mr. Ray Chan, in accordance to the RAP, what's the role of chairman of Bills Committee? Now that you have to play neutral, so you wish to conclude scrutiny as soon as possible. But is the government in a hurry? So Mr. Alohin asked that he wrote it on the April 10th, and then it only replied on April 19th. So I wrote on the April 13th. I'm yet to receive a reply today. So you keep on increasing the number of meetings, and yet the government refused to respond. I see that as a corporate relationship. We can't just dwell on the questions on round. So I give you a clear set of questions, and yet I will get a response. So and then you move on to the next part. And now that this meeting is held at the same time in the Environmental Affairs Panel, the next 2 hours would actually be clashed with a joint panel meeting of 3 meetings. If it requires quorum for both sides, so members will be at a loss to which quorum do they have to reach first. So now that members have to make a choice to which meeting of not to give up or to attend. Mr. Alice Mack. So that now that for the anything, if claims point of order, then you have to say anything goes. So instead of referring to RP, what section and clause, so every time there seems to at every meeting they want to deal with this point of order before a discussion. We can just make it a norm. We just reserve 15 minutes to deal with such inquiries. And some other colleagues mean that a point of order, for example, Ms. Chang has been criticized that that has been taken a position during this point of orders. We should not have double standards. We have to be consistent. At least people will respect you. Otherwise, they will look down on you. And some other member colleagues said that, Madam Chair, you haven't consulted the other panels. I don't know such rule exists. So I have been a panel chair for so many years, and nobody seek my consent to call a meeting during that panel time slot. We shouldn't have any double standards. Other people will look down on you.
Thank you very much. It was some negligence on my part in the past. I should have asked for members to stipulate the specific rule they are referring to in case of point of order. As for the written questions, they were received by the Secretariat and conveyed to the government. Some letters arrived late. For example, the letter from Dr. Fernando Chang was received late on the 6th of April. So you should not expect the Secretariat staff to wait next to the fax machine all the time. So time is needed for the government to provide a response. So we now invite the government to respond. How about the visit? The speaker is not coming through the microphone. Secretary, please. Thank you. Some members said their replies have not been responded to by us. In fact, with respect to all written letters from members, we make it our goal to address them as soon as possible. Some might require a longer time, but we are doing so in good faith. And the timing of the response might not have direct relevance to the timing we received the questions. As for the scope of the visit, when we look at the facts, a lot of schedules included in this bill has already stipulated the boundary of the port area. So for ordinary tourists, they would have passed by the majority of the mainland port area. For example, the platform level on B4, when you can see everything from the platform area. As for the departure level, you would pass by Hong Kong's departure area and the arrival area of the mainland. And from the platform area to B2, you would pass through the mainland departure area and the Hong Kong arrival area. So virtually, you would have passed through the entire area. So you can see very clearly the boundary delineated. So basically, my deductions are very similar to the observations of many members. Mr. Peng, would you like to address the question on drafting? Thank you very much. The legal advisor talked about the public authority. The phrase statutory power is mentioned in Clause 6, and they are listed in Roman numeral paragraphs 1 and 2. And in paragraph 1, the powers of the public authority are stipulated, while paragraph 2 stipulates the powers of the regulatory bodies. In order to clearly differentiate between the two paragraphs, we have introduced an exemption under public authority to exclude regulatory bodies. Mr. Cho, would you like to add anything? As we said, these involve clauses 7 and 8, so by the time we scrutinize those clauses, we can take in further questions from members. Thank you very much. On clause 4, can the government walk us through? Is that a point of order? The speaker is not coming through the microphone. I would give you a minute. I'm sure everyone knows what we are talking about. We want to see the Shek Kong stablings. Would this be possible? Secretary, what happens with the Shek Kong stabling? We would consider that. Members, I'm sure the Secretary would provide a response. Chairman, on the main track and sidings, there are certain operations currently. Even if we visit the Shek Kong stabling sidings, we can only see the where the trains would be positioned. So we might have to wait because there are currently certain operations there. Clause 4, who would walk us through this clause? Chairman, you were yet to complete clause 3, and members were waiting to speak. You cannot proceed to clause 4 now because we are not done on clause 3. Before you came in, I already explained that we already spent 3 hours on clauses 1, 2, and 3. The speaker is not coming through the microphone. Mr. Chu, a lot of questions last time were redundant, and a lot of questions have to do with the clauses 4, 5, and 6. After I finish the scrutiny of all 8 clauses, I would allow you to ask the questions. I hope you can follow 21 requisite of the guidelines for the House Committee. Items which have undergone ample discussion should not be discussed again. We should be discussing the train compartments. How big are the compartments? We already spent a whole meeting on that. I reiterate that we would enter the scrutiny of Clause 4. As for Clauses 1 to 3, after we finish the scrutiny of all 8 clauses, we would allow for questions again. A lot of your questions involve the Clauses 4, 5, and 6. Mr. Andy Lam, Principal Assistant Secretary. Mr. Chu, please be seated and observe order. Please be seated. Is that a point of order? Mr. Chang, at 2:53, we agreed to your arrangement for clauses 1 to 3. Mr. Lam, please. The speaker is, the microphone is not on. Mr. Chu, please be seated. I already explained the arrangement. Mr. Chu, Mr. Fan, I already explained the arrangement. Let me explain the matter again. Please be seated, Mr. Chu. You can ask your questions later. Please speak in turn. Please be seated, Mr. Chu. Please be seated and observe the order of the meeting. I act according to the rules of procedure. Last time, members asked a lot of questions about train compartments, and many of them are to do with clauses 6, 7, and 8. So when time allows, I would allow for questions again afterwards. Mr. Andy Lam, please walk us through Clause 4. Clause 4 has to do with the declaration of the mainland port area at West Kowloon Station. Mr. Chu, if this persists, I would ask you to leave. We can refer to Schedule 2, Layout Plan 1 of the bill, and the orange area. This is the area declared as the mainland port area at West Kowloon Station. And this layout plan and schedule. Please stop shouting, members. Speaker's not coming through. We would have to ask the 3 members to leave. Mr. Chu, Mr. Fan. Meeting is suspended.